So next, David Fisher is going to talk about the idea of a blockchain-enabled firm or legal department, and Glynna Christian, who's a partner in the technology practice, including blockchain at Orrick, is going to participate in that conversation as well.
Okay, so we'll go through this pretty quickly. So following up on David Berger's, I think, brilliantly simple approach to applying blockchain to the legal technology stack of the world. So Glynna and I are going to talk a little bit about how, in practical terms, this might be interpreted by a law firm or an in-house legal department. And just so we get a quick sense of demographics in the room, how many people here are part of a software company? Just raise your hand. Okay. How many people are part of a corporate legal department? Okay. And is everyone else at a law firm? Okay, thank you. So, as David said, we have these foundational services. And when I started this, I guess going on 3 years, it's kind of amazing to think, while everyone was looking at sort of the fancy, sexy parts of blockchains, you have cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, which sounds like it's a legal thing, and really it's a poorly named type of just self-executing code. We had the insight that really what makes all this possible, whether it's cryptocurrency or smart contracts, is this notion of digital trust. Right? The reason you can have a smart contract, a self-executing code fragment, is because you trust the code. It's there open to review on blockchains. You see it, you trust it, it's immutable, and you trust the data, the inputs, and the outputs. Again, trust, digital trust. And so when we set out to create what we call blockchain for law, the Integra ledger, we didn't focus on the application layer. We focused on that trust layer, thus the creation of the consortium. I think we're now approaching 90 members, which is incredible. I mean, we announced it at ILTA just a year ago, and just in the last 30 days, the size of the consortium has doubled. So it's accelerating, which is really great to see. But the idea is the ultimate root of trust, for this blockchain, is the industry itself, which I think is appropriate just given the nature of law and its self-governing structure. It makes sense that the legal industry should provide the governance, and the root of trust for a blockchain for law. So that's the consortium. That's the strategic concept there. Then for the blockchain itself, the Integra ledger, the idea was to, again, not focus on building consortium applications, as you might see it on Wall Street or in trade finance or various other industries where you have an industry come together to try to collectively build one application. That's not the approach we took. Our approach was, let's create these basic foundational services. So simple things like universal identifiers or Integra ID. Proof of existence, right, through hashes, and as David mentioned, a key registry. I mean, really unbelievably simple. As David also mentioned, I mean, that the record for an integration was 45 minutes, because we designed this so you don't have to be a blockchain developer. And the reality is, if you're in a corporate legal department, or a law firm, I mean, you're not there to develop software, right? You're there to, as Glynna can confirm, serve clients. And so what we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes or so is how blockchain, the way we've architected this via the consortium and Integra, we think becomes a reality very soon in the day-to-day operations of the world's lawyers. So David mentioned that we've implemented this so you don't have to go and develop on blockchain. Right? We don't expect the average law firm to go develop its own Ethereum wallet, and connect to the Ethereum blockchain and synchronize a node and deal with all that's involved with that. Really what you want to do is you want to be able to utilize the digital trust features of blockchain. And so we implemented Integra in a way that would allow the software companies, and I think 10 or 12 of which are going to do demos this afternoon, to implement these blockchain digital trust, proof of existence, authenticity features so that the consumers of law, whether they're clients, corporations, individuals, law firms, can implement net documents, and wake up one day in a week or a month and have this full-featured document management system with additional functionality, additional digital trust, proof of existence, authenticity built in. And so that's how we've designed this. So one way we like to talk about this is, this goes back to the essence of why we did this and how we designed it. It's a simple idea, really. Unique legal data should exist one time. And if you think about that, that sort of makes sense, right? You sign a contract, but as everyone in this room knows, every contract today has some boilerplate language that counterpart agreements are all basically considered the same agreement. But in reality, they exist in different places. They're not the same thing. So our insight was that blockchain, much in the way that it can confirm the existence and authenticity of a Bitcoin or a token, why not look at a legal document or a contract in the same way you think of a cryptocurrency? Right? So if you can trust a blockchain that has no intermediaries, no central authority, no Google in the middle, no Facebook in the middle, no US government in the middle, if you can trust a blockchain to confirm the continuing existence and uniqueness of that ownership of that digital asset, why not apply that same concept to really the currency of law, which is documents, it's words.
I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. I don't know if can everybody hear me okay? So let me give you a real world example of that, because is that any better? Okay. When I listen to David Fisher and David Berger talk, I completely don't understand what they're discussing, what they're talking about, because I have to have pictures and I need to see it. So when NetDocs does their example and some of the other ones later, make sure you come and watch that, because the bane of my existence and what David is talking about is trying to know what's the final execution version of a contract, right? How many times have you had a client call you, or you'd be the one to say, do you still have that final version that was executed 8 years ago? Wasn't that so-and-so who worked on that? Are they still with the company? They got to look through their emails to find it, right? Almost on a daily basis. So what David is discussing is simplifying that and using blockchain ledger technology to be able to have a hash, to be able to find it anywhere where it is. And that Documents now has a management system where you can store on a blockchain, the Integra Ledger blockchain, so your client and you just need that code, and then you can retrieve it. It makes it super easy. When you see the demo, you're gonna be like, holy cow, that's amazing. So that, in terms of making my life better, or my clients easier, and trying to find things, is just but one little example. So I wanted to throw in some, how you can already use it to try to make efficiency and process a little more clean, easy.
If you could hold your question for 1 second. It's a simple universal idea, right? Anything that's unique, and you really could apply this to the world, not just law, but we started in law because everything in law is documents, contracts. This is again the currency, right? But if you look at this principle that unique legal data should exist at one time, it begs the question, what are all those unique data structures and data types in law? And so we'd say documents, data in general, it could be photographs, evidence, anything, billing entries, right? I mean, you imagine a bill, there's an entry exists one time, it's one bill, right? Even though that may bounce around from accounting systems and clients and law firms. How about calendar entries? I think we could all agree that a meeting that is scheduled, and you might have 10 attendees at that meeting, there's only one meeting, right? Now, there are various calendaring systems and software, but as you look across the legal landscape at these unique data types, it was our belief and insight, I think, that these are universal ideas. It doesn't matter if your document is in Box.com or Dropbox or Google Docs or Premises or whatever. The concept is the same. A unique document should exist only one time. That's why, and that explains why we have the foundational services that we have. So the universal ID system. So regardless of what matter management system you use, no matter what document management system, that identifier is generic in a way, and provided it is recorded and confirmed on an industry-governed blockchain, that it universalizes matter IDs, document IDs, right? So that explains the concept there, and you can apply it to any of these data structures. So we think this is going to impact documents, certainly, calendaring. Imagine through one industry-governed blockchain, being able to confirm with authenticity all calendar entries in the world, right? It's you set a calendar entry for could be a court appearance, could be a deadline, could be anything. It gets recorded, it gets hashed, and it's confirmed for everyone. Now everyone can actually take their calendar, regardless of what calendar software, and check it against that third-party immutable ledger. So calendar, and then finally billing entries. Think about the reconciliation cost, right? You send a bill, if it's a major corporation, then maybe you're on their billing system, and so you're linked. But for most clients and law firms, there is no intrinsic integrity between those systems. Again, that's where this universal blockchain-based identifier comes in. So now a law firm, an Orrick potentially, generates a legal bill, right? Gets a unique identifier.
They're small.
They're small bills. But there's no limit. You can actually generate IDs for every entry. And you end up with something that we would call a blockchain schema. So you take that legal bill, the bill itself has an ID and a hash. Every entry potentially has an ID, and a hash potentially. The individuals, the billing attorney, can have an ID. Back to the question you asked. As soon as you end up with a system of universal IDs, I was talking to someone at Cisco a couple months ago, and they referred to this as really the universal API of legal data. And so we think that, and that's why we're so happy that the consortium has become so large and is getting larger. What we're talking about here is bringing fundamental data integrity to the world's legal industry via the system of identifiers and hashes, which on the surface seems a lot less sexy than smart contracts or cryptocurrency, but really it's leveraging the exact same concepts to, we think, transform the digital landscape of law.
So you may be covering this later, but one of the things I think that's sort of interesting about what he just said is really around data integrity, because if you're in this room listening to blockchain, you're probably also thinking about AI and using different algorithms. Maybe you're using Kira for due diligence or any other of the different options that are out there. And I think law firms and the legal industry is really starting to look at how you can use AI to drive efficiencies as well. And if you've got data integrity through using a blockchain, then it's going to help your output on the AI side as well. It's garbage in, garbage out in AI. One of the biggest issues with it is what are you putting into your model to drive the output. David's really talking about how to clean up that data as well, driving better AI results too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. As AI gets more sophisticated by the day, subject to more disputes. Imagine, and we're already seeing this in the autonomous driving space, with some of the Tesla crashes, where there's a dispute over whether it was the software, or the driver. How do you prove it, right? I mean, do you put the software engineer on the stand? I mean, so what Glynna is referring to, and I've mentioned this at other conferences, that we think, for all the wonderful things we're going to do to clean up data reconciliation, data integrity across the legal industry, we think the killer app for blockchain and law may actually be as audit for AI. So being able to hash and confirm the data that was used to train the model, the model itself, the state of the algorithm, that sort of thing. So that's we think a big use case, and actually there'll be some discussion of that later this afternoon. So we had a question here first, I think.
Yeah.
So you started to touch on when you started to put it across the industry. But if we talk about the single instance of the document when you started, are you targeting a single instance across a firm, between the firm and the client, between the firm and all the contacts within the client, or a single instance of the document for all parties of the transaction?
It's for any purpose. I mean, this is a global, universal identifier system. So if you're a law firm and you want to get an Integra ID and hash the document, I mean, you don't need anyone else to do that. You can write that to the blockchain. But if you're working with another firm and you want to reference that and have them use that identifier potentially, now you've created that integrity there. And it could, as Glynna said, it just could be for look-back purposes. So I mean, we know that companies merge and law firms change and so on and so forth. So at some point, if when you're looking at that box of digital files, and you want to say, what is this a complete, is this the complete patent file? Is this every document?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a means to confirm that. So it's we don't take a position necessarily on how it gets used, client to client, law firm to law firm, individually. It's this universal system that can be accessed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so then a comment, like I've looked at the API, just scanned it. It's not really adequate for that cross-industry scenario that you talked about. There's things like access controls, being able to group documents into files, like legal files. Like it's maybe a tenth of what it needs to be, right?
Again, we kept it at just the foundational service. Now, to the extent that people want to build on top of that, to their liking, that's fine. But especially at the earliest stage of this, we didn't want to take a position on how some of those things should be implemented. So all we did was stand up the most basic services. But again, that's per the technical advisory board that stood up. We'll be adding to that. I mean, Integra is a small technology company. It's not for us to promulgate a specification for the industry.
Yeah. Well, I guess I provide the same feedback I provided the previous guy. You need a set of documented use cases so that you can be evaluating the progress in the API against what you're actually ultimately trying to create.
We don't disagree. But again, it's been a process here to actually gather critical mass of the industry. And so I think we're there. I mean, that's why we had this meeting. While we announced this a year ago, today is really the kickoff, the consortium. We're at 90 members, which makes it, I think, the largest in the world in law, with the committees being stood up. So Integra founded this and funded this, but we have an independent board. There'll be elections, so we have to kind of set it free. So that's what's happening next.
So I'm trying to understand exactly the nature of the problem you hope to solve. I understand the need for a single instance of a document. So I've heard already 15 or 18 years ago about no party to a transaction could find the final executed version. So I get that, but when you describe about saying having individual attorneys identified or billing entries identified uniquely, I don't really understand the problem that solves, because I don't see a lack of trust in the legal market as a big issue. So what's the benefit from a day-to-day, if I'm a business manager in a law firm or if I'm a lawyer practicing, what's really the problem solving? The document part I get, but why would we want to incur the overhead to track all those other individual data items at such a granular level? What does that get us?
Well, the answer is individually, not a lot.
Sorry, say again?
The answer is individually, not a lot. No law firm is going to stand up and invest heavily, and that's why it's a consortium model. It's to mutualize the investment. You know, from your standpoint, and do you work for a law firm or?
No, I'm a consultant.
Okay.
But I work with law firms and law departments, so both sides.
We think that this moves the needle industry-wide by, you know, 1% or 2 or 3. So so at a macro level, it's a big deal. But no firm is going to step forward.
No, but you're not. That doesn't answer why at a macro level is it a big deal.
Well, I mean, the world works, you know, as it is, but it can work better, and that's our contention. So I think the reason we have the afternoon of demos is to show how this is being. So you'll see how Contract Express adds functionality. You see how Net Documents adds functionality. Now, would a law firm go and independently invest in that? Maybe not, but the software you use, we believe, will increasingly have these integrations, much as Twilio, you know, as a service is built into software to do SMS. I mean, most firms, most software companies don't want to go build the infrastructure to do SMS messaging. You know, they'd rather pay a penny per or a tenth of a penny per message. This is the same sort of thing. I mean, if it's a hundredth of a penny or a tenth of a penny to simply write and confirm existence, that's helpful over time. You know, but it's not something you're gonna rush out and say, wow, this is a life-changing thing.
It's actually a little more than that as well, to be fair, because what we hear from our clients every day, not just what they're asking us, but internally at our clients, particularly the larger companies, is what are we doing to innovate and try to anticipate and be ahead of the game? What are we doing from a technology and a design process standpoint to do things differently? They're really looking for their outside counsel to partner with them and find ways to be better service providers so they can be better service providers to their business units. I hear clients on a regular basis say they are not just looking at providing legal answers, they are looking at how they can help generate revenue for the company. So even within internal legal departments, the role of lawyer is changing. It's more business advisor. It's also more about driving company efficiency and bottom line growth. And trying to drive efficiencies through new technology is one of the ways doing that. So what's really important to a lot of our clients is they don't want to have the business come to them and say, we have this great new product, we're going to use blockchain as the underlying infrastructure, make it happen, and then the lawyers not know what they're talking about, not have already thought about the risk, and not already have implemented it in some way. They want to go to their business teams and say, guess what? We've got this cool new NetDocs application where we can use Integra Ledger to store documents on it because we want to know what you're looking at. We want to be thinking about this now and kicking the tires on it. So nobody that I'm working with right now is trying to, you know, come up with the ultimate cool app, but they're looking about how do we become blockchain enabled? What do we need to do to understand what our business people and our technical people are doing?
It's infrastructure, right? I mean, just like their internet protocols, I mean, and their conventions. That's why it's hard. That's why you need a community. That's why you need a consortium. This is infrastructure. No one company or firm can do it and get an ROI on it. One thing I want to mention on what Glynna just said, so something that's already emerging, and we've had discussions with the Accord project, which is the Smart Contracts Consortium, is aligning the smart contracts community with the GLBC kind of global identifier and authenticity community to embed IDs, unique legal industry IDs, in smart contracts. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about it, for the emerging smart contracts world, especially in financial services, so great, you create a smart contract, you have multiple parties, you have lawyers involved. How do you relate that smart contract to the legal industry? Do you photocopy it and stick it in a file? Do you copy it as a text file and file it in your document management system? Wouldn't it be better if you actually had blockchain-based digital integrity through the entire chain? That's what we're talking about. So again, if Net Documents, and other systems are starting to implement these blockchain-based identifiers, now interestingly, a Net Documents becomes relevant potentially to the smart contract world. I don't know if you've thought about that, but the thing, there's functionality that's coming that's not obvious on the surface, but as a community, and that's why we're doing this. I mean, we're creating the infrastructure to create that sort of new potential. And so you'll see some of the applications this afternoon, but ultimately we think what's really exciting is what comes next. So as we get alignment across the legal industry and against the smart contracts folks and it's the global ID folks, as that becomes consistent, very much like web addresses and DNS and name registry on the web is just a universal thing. As this becomes universal, we'll see new applications spring up on top of it.
We have a last question right over here, and I just wanted to mention after this question, we're gonna take a break, and we'll reconvene at 12:30. We'll have a brief kickoff at 12:30, and then there'll be, as I mentioned, a series of 12 or 14 little demos and announcements and other things blockchain related from some of you in the room and your colleagues. I'd like to also mention that there's a blockchain track at ILTACon throughout the week. So Glynna Christian, who's sitting up front, is kicking off the Blockchain 101 session on Monday. On Wednesday, there's a real-world blockchain session and a how to build your first blockchain app session. And then on Thursday morning, there's a session on the future of blockchain. So if you're interested in any of those, just search blockchain in the ILTACon website and it'll give you the particulars. So we hope you'll come and engage in those sessions as well. And here's our last question.
My question's around the scope of the GLBC as it currently stands. It sounds that the GLBC is focused around efficiencies and applications within the legal vertical itself, but is there the potential for law firms to reinvent themselves as advisors to business networks and actually advising other industries to adopt blockchain technology? Is that part of the focus of what the GLBC is? And along a similar vein to that, is it also concerned with the application of, well, the changes that are going to come in law itself from blockchain and, you know, the changing nature of contracts, physical contracts versus digital? So I guess there's two questions there. There's the first around enabling law firms to be advisors to other industries, because lawyers see the problems in industries, in industry verticals. So if they understand blockchain, they might be able to take the front foot and be able to advise on changing industry verticals through blockchain technology. Is that a focus of the GLBC, and is law itself a focus of the GLBC?
Yeah, so first of all, let me say that while we launched this and founded it, I mean, it's really in the process of being set free as an independent, truly independent organization. So I think the future focus is up to the members. So that's my broad, I guess, non-answer. The way we did focus on this initially was business of law. Virtually we saw that almost everything else blockchain-wise was focused on law in the practice of law in the context of other industries. So an example would be the legal group at R3, which is really there, supporting the Wall Street blockchain consortium and what they're doing from a legal perspective. Or you have the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance Legal Working Group, which is similar in the sense of advising the companies they're doing business unit application of blockchain technology, and so you have a group of lawyers there to help support that. We felt that rather than just focusing on how attorneys support other industries, that this group first and foremost need to focus on the business of law, the tech stack of law. So I think that's why I don't set the agenda going forward. That was the principle by which this is founded, and that's why the demos this afternoon are software applications in the legal space. Now, the fact of the matter is law touches everything, right? It's a context for life for every industry. And so I think as the organization gets bigger, and I suspect it's about to get a lot bigger, as in probably one of the top 3 blockchain consortia in the world of any industry. I think that's where we're going to be by the end of the year, probably maybe number 2. I think, as Jay Hall mentioned, I think there'll probably be communities of interest. So you might end up with the pharmaceutical industry, subgroup or committee, and you might have Wall Street, and you might have insurance, and so on and so forth. And so I suspect that the mandate will broaden. And in terms of content, I think that will follow. Do you have any thoughts?
So I think it is more than just the legal industry per se, because we're seeing it in clients mostly in other industries, other than tech industries and other than other law firms or in-house legal departments. So for example, in real estate, I'm on the board of a public housing foundation that's already jumping into blockchain on how they can drive more efficiencies in public housing projects, because things are still done by Excel spreadsheets. And so they can just go right into blockchain to have better, tracking and identification there. Financial services, legal departments are using it. So we're already seeing it drive lots of other industries which are dependent on different legal requirements, particularly contracting. So tracking the supply chain, letters of credit, sort of the more mundane task, but that's really where the applications are already being used. So it's really legal issues and legal documents in other industries where I think is going to be the most quick adoption. So I think the consortium ought to be involved in that from a data integrity and consistency standpoint.
Great. Thanks, everyone.